Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen. Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam tasliman kathiran kathiran. Fama ba'du, to continue with our series of lectures on the seerah of Rasulullah, we are at the point of the Battle of Uhud, which was one of the three major battles that were fought before the opening of Makkah, before Fatah Makkah. The first was the Battle of Badr, second was the Battle of Uhud, and the third one, which we will come to in due course, was the Battle of Al-Ahzab, the Confederates, or also called the Battle of Al-Khandaq, the Battle of the Trench, because this was a new tactic in defense that the Arabs had never seen and never used, but it was introduced at the suggestion of Salman al-Farsi, and we'll come to that inshallah. So in the Battle of Uhud, in the beginning, Rasulullah held a sword. He held his sword in his hand and he said, who will take this sword from me? Many Sahaba volunteered, but Rasulullah didn't give it to them. He said, who will take this sword along with its rights? The Sahaba said, what are its rights, Ya Rasulullah? And he said, to strike the enemy with it until it bends. Now, he's talking here about bravery in battle. He's talking about not running away from battle, not running away from the challenge. So, one of them, Abu Dujana who came forward and he said, Ya Rasulullah, I will take it with its rights. So Rasulullah gave it to him. Then Abu Dujana took out a red headband and tied it around his head, and then he began strutting, like this sort of stylized walking like this kind of thing, with the sword between the two lines, between the Muslims and the Quraysh. And their helpers. Ibn Ishaq he writes in his seerah that Rasulullah said, that is a way of walking that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dislikes, except in circumstances like this. So Abu Dujana was doing it for a reason in that time and place, before a battle, before the enemy. The object of that was to give confidence to his soldiers and to, the opposite of that for the enemy soldiers. So Rasulullah said that as a normal way of walking, which is walking with pride and arrogance, or the symbols of pride and arrogance, is haram. It's not permissible. A Muslim walks with strength, but with humbleness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this in the Quran as well, where He said that they walk with humbleness. With strength and not with arrogance. Now, Abu Dujana proved his claim of fulfilling the rights of the sword, and when he went into the fighting, he literally cleaved a path with it, with his sword, through the middle of the enemy. Abdullah bin Zubayr says that there was a man among the mushrikeen who was a great warrior, and he was also known to be a very cruel kind of man. He never spared anyone. I mean, whoever he dealt with, he killed them. Then he met Abu Dujana, who killed him. And similarly, there were many such incidents. Ka'b bin Malik also narrated. He said he saw a Muslim and his enemy fighting. The enemy was bigger and better armed. The Muslim then struck him on the shoulder and went through the body, and the sword came out near his thigh. So he went through the entire body, crosswise, and then he uncovered his face. His face was covered, like a cup. And he said to Ka'b bin Malik, "How about that Ka'b? I am Abu Dujana." So alhamdulillah, these were times of battle, and the Muslims showed their bravery, and they showed their also their martial ability, their ability with weapons and so on. The Quraysh, this all of this, and not just Abu Jahl alone, but the way that first wave of attack went and so on, it routed the Quraysh, and the Quraysh were now in flight. Banu Abdul Dar, they were the standard bearers of the Quraysh. The previous night, Abu Sufyan said to them, "You were in charge of our banner at Badr. Men will only fight for flags. So either you hold the banner up or you give it to us, and we will relieve you of the responsibility." Now, obviously, the Banu Abdul Dar were furious with this, and they said, "Tomorrow you will see how we will behave. Tomorrow you will see how we will behave." And they stood up to their promise. 7 of their men died, one after the other, holding up the banner. Finally, one of their Abyssinian slaves held it up until both his arms were severed, and then he said, "Have I done my duty?" And then he fell. The Quraysh were obviously clearly losing the battle, and they started to flee. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this, and he said, وَلَقَدْ صَدَقَكُمُ اللَّهُ وَعْدَهُ إِذْ تَحُصُّونَهُمْ بِإِذْنِهِ حَتَّى إِذَا فَشِلْتُمْ وَتَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ وَعَصَيْتُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا أَرَاكُمْ مَا تُحِبُّونَ مِنْكُمْ مَنْ يُرِيدُ الدُّنْيَا وَمِنْكُمْ مَنْ يُرِيدُ الْآخِرَةَ ثُمَّ صَرَفَكُمْ عَنْهُمْ لِيَبْتَلِيَكُمْ وَلَقَدْ عَفَا عَنْكُمْ وَاللَّهُ ذُو فَضْلٍ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-Imran, the detailed bayan of the Battle of Uhud is in Surah Al-Imran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did indeed fulfill His promise to you when you were killing your enemy with His permission until the moment you lost your courage and you fell to disputing about the order, which is the order of Rasulullah, which we will come to in a minute, and disobeyed. And after He showed you, that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed you the booty which you love. Among you are some that desire this world and some that desire the hereafter. Then He, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, made you flee from them, flee from your enemy, that He might test you, but surely He forgave you, and Allah is most gracious to the believers. So initially, the Muslims won the battle at Uhud, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala confirmed this. Then, however, the archers disobeyed Rasulullah, as I mentioned to you in the last class. And if you go, and you must go, when you go to Medina, then go to the mountain of Uhud. That is the only material thing that remains, which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam looked at, where he walked on, he sat, and he with his back to the mountain of Uhud, and he said that this Uhud, this mountain, loves us and we love the mountain. Right? It's not a matter of a rock loving somebody. It's a question of love in the sense of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation and creatures. So Uhud is the only physical thing that remains, which has the athar, or the signs and symbols, and which has the effect and the barakah of the physical presence of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Of course, the Masjid Nabawi Sharif is there, and then the Rawda al-Kareem is there, and I mean these are all, of course, obviously there. But I'm just saying in other things. This is the Uhud. So go there. When you go there, you will see, when you go to the graves of the Shuhada of Uhud, you will see there is a hilak, which is a little way away from Uhud, and there is a passage between the two, between the mountain of Uhud and this hilak. And Rasulullah ﷺ had placed archers, on that hilak. There were 50 of them. He placed 50 archers there, and in the last class I told you the kind of instructions he gave them. There's very clear instructions. He said, do not move no matter what happens. If you see the vultures taking away our bodies, eating off our bodies, don't move. And if you see us, if you see all the booty and the bounty, and if you see the enemy is routed, still do not move until I send a messenger to you. And this, there could be no instruction clearer than that. But we'll see what happened now. So initially, then the archers disobeyed. So when they saw the Muslims gathering booty, and they saw the Quraysh running, they wanted to go down and join them. Their leader, Abdullah bin Jubair, radiallahu anhu, he reminded them. He said, this is exactly what Rasulullah predicted, and this is what he told us, and this was the order of the Nabi alayhi salam. And he said, do not move, no matter what happens, no matter what you see, do not move from this place until I send a messenger, and the messenger has not come. So stay here, don't move. But 40 out of the 50, they mutinied and they left. Right? Now think about this and see how this applies to us today. The whole purpose of all these lectures is, I'm not saying anything new to you. Pick up any book of Sirah and you will have all of this. I didn't invent any of this. I don't get wahi. There's nothing new that I have to tell you. My contribution in this, for myself primarily and for you, is to try to link this with our daily lives. So what is it that we learn from this narrative? And what we learn from the narrative is the way we treat the orders and commands of Rasulullah. So what was the problem with how they treated his command? The problem was that the people who left there, they didn't say that Rasulullah did not say this, right? They didn't say the report is false. They said, yes, he said that, but it doesn't apply now. Now that was the basic fundamental thing. Although he was absolutely clear. He said, even if you see the enemy is routed, still don't move. So I mean, how can somebody say it doesn't apply? But anyway, that was the logic. They said the command applied as long as the battle was being fought, but the battle is over, right? The battle is over. People have run away. There is no enemy that we can see here. People are getting the booty, and if we don't go down and if we don't grab something, we will be left without any booty. And these were people. This was not a professional trained army. These were not soldiers on a salary. These were skirmishers. These were tribal warriors. In those days, using of weapons was a basic skill that every person learned. I mean, it's not only men. The men and women, they both learned how to use weapons because these were dangerous times. Number one. Number two, raiding was a time-honored tradition of those days. Right? We're talking about the 6th century. So raiding, and it is not only the Arabs. This was across the world at the time, and for centuries later. For one tribe to raid another tribe, for one country to raid another country and grab booty and so on. It happened all over the world, including in continental America. The Native American tribes, they would raid. This was how their young men proved their mettle by their raids, and how they they had different ways of showing. I mean, some collected scalps in this country, in continental America. In other countries, they didn't collect scalps; they collected heads, whatever they did that. But the point is that in Africa, all over the place, you see, this was a time-honored tradition of raiding. So they would raid, they would grab cattle, they would take the women, and the women would come to this tribe, and they would marry them and have children and so on. So those women became part of this tribe, and the men, of course, whoever was there, who got killed, who would escape. So these were not safe times. So obviously, you had to be prepared for any eventuality, and therefore being able to use weapons and being able to fight was considered to be a life skill, and people learned that. So everybody knew it. And in these cases, when they were raiding, so this was like a conscript thing. Now, what was the gain from this? Obviously, like in a raid, it was booty, it was the ghanima which they got. So here was a case where enemy is routed, people are after the possessions of the enemy, and these people, they said, well, we are not denying the order of Rasulullah, but it doesn't apply anymore. And so they left and they went. Now think about this. Isn't this how we treat the orders of Rasulullah today? Many of us don't say, yeah, that is true. I mean, we don't deny the order, but different times, different places, different geographies, different countries, different culture, and that order was good for the time. It doesn't apply anymore. Some of us may not actually say that in so many words, out of ihtiram, out of the respect for the Prophet ﷺ, and this is good. But our actions prove the opposite. Our actions are as if we are saying it in so many words, and that is something which is really worth thinking about and saying that if my actions are going to give the game away of what is in my heart, then before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's only actions which count. So we have to be serious about that. So 40 out of 50 left. Now, this was exactly what Khalid bin Walid, who later on became a Muslim, and Ikrama bin Abu Jahl, these were the two commanders of the cavalry of the Quraysh, and they were behind Uhud, hidden from the view of these archers, and they had not joined the battle because the archers were on that hill, because they would have had to pass through that, the pass between the two hills, and that would be lethal because you had archers on this hill, and if the cavalry charged through that, then they would be decimated. So they couldn't take the risk. But the moment they saw the archers leaving, that was like a prayer come true for them, and Khalid bin Walid and Ikrama bin Abi Jahl led their cavalry through that pass, and they attacked the Muslims. Now the Muslims were busy with the booty. They didn't see this coming. So and they came from the back. Cavalry on infantry is death, right? It's death. There is no way that infantry can. I don't think there is any case, except for one or two of the battles between the 100-year war between the British and the French. There are a couple of very famous battles where cavalry was armored cavalry. The Abu Jahl and Ikrama bin Abu Jahl and Khalid bin Walid's cavalry was not. Soldiers were not armored. They had their usual armor, but they were not armored as in the sense of the French knights, who were completely encased in steel. But the British defeated them not with infantry but with archers. It was the English longbow which did the job and completely destroyed the French knights. But these are exceptions, and it was again archers. So here archers were out of the case. This was just infantry, and that infantry also was busy with the booty, and the cavalry decimated them. They came from the back, and this was like the worst nightmare come true. Cavalry on infantry is it's a signed and sealed case. And to top of that, what happened was that when the cavalry came and when they heard the cavalry charges, the Quraysh who were running away, they turned around. So now the Muslims got caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. So they had the Quraysh cavalry on one side and they had the Quraysh infantry who turned around and came back. And obviously now they came back with full vengeance and they were ashamed for having run away, and these were people who were taking away their booty and their wealth. So they came with full force. Obviously the result was written in that sense, and Muslims were starting to get killed. Some ran away. Eventually, when the head count was taken, there were 70 Sahaba lost their lives in this battle, including some very famous names. The Abdullah bin Rawaha radiallahu anhu, for example, Musab ibn Umayr radiallahu anhu, and Hamza bin Abdul Muttalib, the cousin of an uncle of uncle of Rasulullah ﷺ and his milk brother, because they nursed from the same person. These people and many others, so 70 of the Sahaba were killed and were shaheed in that battle, thanks to these people leaving their position, the archers leaving their place. There were only about 12 people left around Rasulullah. Everyone else had gone. These were just people who were protecting the life of Rasulullah. Rasulullah, his bravery is boundless. Any number of cases where we've seen how brave he was, and this is also expressed through one other thing, which is that he never killed anybody. He never bore weapons. I mean, everyone had their personal weapons. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam also had a sword, but he never killed anyone with it. He didn't attack anyone with it, including in battle. So even in this case, he was not killing anybody, but he was right there at the front. And so some of the Sahaba, they surrounded him to protect him. Important point here to keep in mind is that both victory and defeat are tests, and in Uhud we see both. We see the victory which happened in the beginning, and then we saw the defeat that happened thereafter, and both are tests from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was just with these people, and eventually the enemy broke through right to him. One of them threw a rock at him, and this rock hit him in the face. Subhanallah. It cut his lips, it broke his front teeth, it slashed his face, and his helmet was crushed on his head, which also probably he had a hairline fracture of the skull. Later on he used to suffer from these very terrible migraines, and probably, I mean, again, this is all conjecture today from what we know. And some of the people have said that maybe it was viral meningitis which affects the brain, and that virus would have got him through the hairline fracture thanks to this. Anyway, we don't need to go there. I'm just mentioning that in passing. But his helmet got crushed to his head. He was carried up on the side of the. He actually fell down because Talha bin Ubaidullah radiallahu anhu, he carried Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam up the side of the mountain into a crevice, and they put him there for his protection. Because with this concussion that he got, he lost consciousness for a while, just sort of partially lost consciousness, and he fell down. And people thought he had died. People thought he had been killed. And there was a whole rumor in Uhud saying that Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has been killed. Fatima radiallahu anha was there. Imagine these women were there with their soldiers. So Fatima radiallahu anha was there, and she. Sayyidina Ali brought water in his shield, and he poured it, and Sayyidina Fatima radiallahu anha, she was washing the wound. But scalp wounds, face wounds, they bleed a lot, and when they poured water, there was even more blood flowing. So finally, Sayyidina Fatima radiallahu anha, she took a piece of sacking, she burnt it, and then she plastered his face, the face of the Nabi alayhi salam, with that burnt sacking, which stopped the blood. His teeth were broken. All of this happened. Despite that, Rasulullah ﷺ was trying to organize the retreat so that it doesn't become a rout. That would have completely, finished off everybody. So he didn't want to do that. So he called out and he said, "Who will repel these people? Who will fight against them? Whoever repels them will get Jannah." So he promised them Jannah to anyone who defended the Muslims. So one Ansari stood up and he fought until he died, and another one, until 7 of the Ansar died fighting. And so really, if you think about that, Al-Ansar, the people of Medina, they earned their title of Al-Ansar literally with their blood. So they helped the Nabi alayhi salam, including with their lives. Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu anhu said that Rasulullah sallallahu said to Sa'ad bin Malik and Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu, he said, "Ya Sa'ad, shoot." He was shooting with his bow. He said, "Ya Sa'ad, shoot. May my father and mother be your ransom. May my father and mother be your ransom." And Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu anhu said that I have never heard Rasulullah sallallahu swear by both his parents, except at Uhud, when he said this to Sa'ad ibn Malik radiallahu anhu. Now that is how pleased Rasulullah sallallahu was with Sa'ad bin Malik and his fighting in this very famous battle. Another hero of that battle, of course, was Talha bin Ubaidillah radiallahu anhu, Abu Talha al-Ansari. who was shooting directly from in front of Messengerﷺ, and he said, Ya Rasulullah, may my father and mother be your ransom. And he said, just tell me, I am strong and I will do whatever you tell me. Now he is the one who carried Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam up the side of the mountain as well, as I mentioned to you. In another account of this, they said that he himself received so many arrows because he was defending. He said he got so many arrows from the enemy in his arm and his shoulder that they said he looked like almost like a pincushion or something. He had all these arrows. So then there was a lull in the battle, and Abu Sufyan came up out of arrow range, and he called out and he said, is Muhammad alive? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Is Abu Bakr alive? Radiallahu anhu. Is Umar ibn al-Khattab alive? Radiallahu anhu. And he knew who were the most important of the people. There was silence. There was no response. So he was very happy. So he said, we have killed them. He said, they've been killed, all of them. Now then, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu couldn't stand this. So he called out. He said, the three men you asked about are alive. All three are alive. So Abu Sufyan obviously was disappointed. He said battles go in cycles. Sometimes we win, sometimes you win. And he said you will see some bodies which are mutilated. Now this is where we see sometimes, and we need to keep on reminding ourselves, that you might see somebody as very evil and very bad and so on and so on. But there is some goodness in them which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changes their destiny for them. And Abu Sufyan is the classic example of that. Khalid bin Walid is a classic example of that. Where people like this, Amr ibn al-As and radiallahu anhu majma'in were classic examples. Now here you see Abu Sufyan, absolute enemy of Rasulullah. He set out to kill the Prophet ﷺ, and he would have been very happy if he had succeeded. Right? Because of him and because of his efforts, 70 Sahaba were killed in the Battle of Uhud. So he didn't leave any stone unturned. The fact that Rasulullah ﷺ did not die at his hand was not because he didn't make enough effort. He did his best. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to protect the Prophet ﷺ, and so he protected him. But there was something good in the man. So he said, you will see some bodies which are mutilated. He said, I did not order that. But it doesn't bother me. Now that's the bravado, that's the trying to save face. But obviously he regretted the fact that people had been mutilated. Because the end of the day also, one was this, this goodness within him, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewarded in the best possible way by giving him Islam. But also these were people who were related. I mean, there were cousins on either side, there were uncles and nephews, in Badr there were father and son. So, it is literally people who were related. And then tribal relationships, today we live in a strange world. We live in such a isolated world that we have lost the benefit of relationships. How many times, for example, have you heard a wife saying, my husband's father, or the husband saying, my wife's mother? There is a relationship with you, no? I mean, you don't say Baba or Amma or something. You don't say mother or father, Ummi or Abi. You don't say, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law. There's a relationship with you. No, we move it out. Oh, my wife's this, my husband's that. So-and-so's cousin, so-and-so's nephew. I mean, that so-and-so's nephew, your husband's nephew, also has a relationship with you. Your wife's nephew or niece has a relationship with you. But we have got used to this. We have got used to speaking like this because we have got used to these nuclear families, this very Western concept of individualism. One of the results of that is loneliness and suicide and depression. But anyway, the point here is that this was not the case of the Arabs. This is not the case of Muslims. When I was growing up, this was not the case with us. I mean, we never talked about. I never heard my father saying my father saying about my mother, her father, her mother. Never. Not in their entire lives did they ever say something like this on either side. It was always the relationship with you. So anyway, the long and short of it is when we look at Abu Sufyan's comment, think about it from that context of tribal loyalties, family loyalties. These were serious things. These were serious things. They believed in them. They respected them. They honored them. So he said, I have not ordered this, but then, saving face and bravado. So he said, well, I don't care about it. Obviously, he cared enough to say it. And then he raised some slogans to his gods and whatnot, and then he left. When he raised slogans to God, to their gods, Rasulullah told the Sahaba to respond with Allahu Akbar. And so they called out Allahu Akbar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِذْ تُسْعِدُونَ وَلَا تَلْغُونَ عَلَى أَحَدٍ وَالرَّسُولُ يَدْعُوكُمْ فِي أُخْرَاكُمْ فَأَثَابَكُمْ غُمًّا بِغَمٍّ لِكَيْ لَا تَحْزَنُوا عَلَى مَا فَاتَكُمْ وَلَا مَا أَصَابَكُمْ وَاللَّهُ خَبِيرٌ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ. And Allah said, and remember when you ran away and climbed the mountain without even casting a side glance at anyone, and the Messengerﷺ was behind you calling you back, there did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you one distress after another by way of requital, to teach you not to grieve for that which had escaped you, nor for that which had befallen you. And Allah is well aware of all that you do. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ تَوَلَّوْا مِنْكُمْ يَوْمَ الْتَقَى الْجَمْعَانِ إِنَّمَا اسْتَزَلَّهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ بِبَعْدِ مَا كَسَبُوا وَلَقَدْ عَفَى اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ حَلِيمٌ. One of the worst crimes and sins is to run away in battle, to show your back to the enemy. But in this case, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, those of you who turn back on the day of the two hosts, which is the day of Uhud, it was shaitan who caused them to backslide, to run away from the battlefield because of some sins that they had earned. So this backsliding is a sign, and which means that when we think about this and we ask ourselves and we say that when we see ourselves behaving badly or doing something bad like this, we must ask ourselves, what is it that took away my courage? Because this was not me. I mean, how did I run away? And that what took away the courage is sins. Sins are debilitating, right? We wear masks for COVID. We become so used to that. Even when there is no COVID, we go around with masks looking stupid. But when it comes to sins, what is the mask? What is the mask to protect us from sins, right? Think about that. We commit sins openly, we accept it. For us, it is, when other people do commit sins, we make justifications for them. Sins are debilitating. Just like COVID takes away your energy and you become extremely tired and sleepy all the time and so on. That's what sins do to you. They take away your energy, they take away your courage, they take away your fortitude and your perseverance. And Allah is saying that. Allah said, you ran away because of the sins that you committed. So there was fear in your heart. Your courage had departed because you ran away, because you disputed amongst yourselves. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, but Allah has forgiven those people. And surely Allah is oft forgiving and most merciful. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His forgiveness and for His mercy. And inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable us to learn from these sessions and to reflect on our own lives. It's very, very important for us to reflect on our own lives. The ayat Surah Al-Imran, which I recited for you, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that He caused one distress after another. Again, the key here is two things. One is, of course, to teach us to be obedient to Him, and also Allah said not to grieve what left, what went was your qadar, it could not have got to you, what you got you could not have missed. So to become radi, to become acceptant and to accept the qadar of Allah, whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed. So alhamdulillah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us to take these lessons, learn these lessons inshallah. More in the next session. وصلى الله على نبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا رب العالمين.